Hi, Dr. Robert Silverman here, Amazon best-selling author of Inside Out Health and host of Proven Health Alternatives. We have an episode that you're about to watch that blows the doors off. It is incredible. Dr. Joseph Antoun, CEO of Nutra, talks about fast mimicking diet. It's based on Dr. Longo's book, the Amazon best-selling book, Longevity Diet, the science, the applicability, the health benefits. Wait till you see the key takeaways. Watch this episode. Everybody, Dr. Rob here, Proven Health Alternatives. I have an outstanding guest today. I'm so excited to have him, Dr. Joseph Antoun. He is the CEO and chairman of the board of Nutra. Dr. Joe, how are you?
Hi, how are you? Thanks for having me today.
I'm excited to have you. I just want to tell all our listeners how I met you. I had read Dr. Longo's book, The Longevity Diet, and I was at one of the doctor meetings, and there was Dr. Joe. He's the CEO of the company that talks about Dr. Longo's longevity diet and prolong, and we were able to connect. And I have to tell you, he's one of the smartest guys I ever met, and he has got a fantastic resume. So he is the leading nutrition. He's the leading nutrition for a longevity company. Dr. Antoun is also chairman of the board at the Global Healthspan Policy Institute, co-director of the health policy at the University of Chicago, and he is the former editor-in-chief of the Journal of Health Services Reform. His work focuses on enhancing public health and human health span through advancing breakthrough technologies that promote healthy aging and reverse chronic disease. He is without question a health advocate for health policy reforms that support R&D, regulatory processes, and increasing access to innovative longevity and health span technology. He has completed his studies in health policy at Harvard University, public health at Johns Hopkins University, in medicine and biological sciences at St. Joseph University. Dr. Joe, once again, I'm so happy to have you. How are you today?
I'm excellent, and I'm really happy that you started with showing the book. That Longevity Diet book, I think has changed so many people's life. Just to tell a little bit our audience in here, the author on this book is Professor Walter Longo, who's the head of the Longevity Institute at the University of Southern California, and was just nominated by Time magazine as the top 50 global influencer in healthcare. And that book has changed my life and is changing the lives of hundreds of thousands of people. Actually, I think it just crossed a million copies sold. So unbelievable. It's just helps us. I went to med school as a doctor, never really had a serious neither interest nor education in nutrition at that level, but then afterwards in practice, and now leading Nutra as a nutrition for longevity company. The value of nutrition is so critical, and that book is really a summary of Dr. Longo went to all the blue zones where the centenarians are, the people who live 100 above, did lab trials and clinical trials for the last 23 years on longevity and aging. Most of it, almost 90% of it, was sponsored by the National Institute of Health. One of the biggest dietary investment from the NIH was in his lab. And this book summarizes really the findings from an epidemiology, from a scientific perspective, and it's a fantastic read.
Yeah, I read the book. The book was great. It opened my eyes. And having written the book myself, his book is based on all science that he performed.
Yeah, what brought all this to life is he discovered the value of fasting for humanity, which for us was, hey, it's the absence of food. But then he scientifically showed that it was part of our diet, and it's actually a big contributor to our longevity, which I'm pretty sure we're going to cover extensively today.
Exactly. I'm happy you, thanks for the softball. I appreciate it. Why is fasting turning out to be so important for our health?
Yeah, it's sometimes the most amazing things get discovered by chance and by studies. When, like Napoleon says, when opportunity meets readiness, right? So Dr. Longo 20 years ago was a postdoc in UCLA, and he was part of the Biosphere Project. I don't know if your audience is familiar with it, but it was one long human trial on calorie restriction, chronic calorie restriction. If we eat a little bit less every day, would we live healthier longer? And that was the biggest objective of this trial. And at the end of it, the research noticed that, yes, you would have less metabolic disorders if you eat less longer, the chronic calorie restriction. but also because, coming out of the trial, when these people were refed, their organs who had been a little bit shrank regrew to normal size. So for the first time ever, there's a description of the cell-based regeneration of organs with chronic calorie restriction. And Dr. Longo went back to the labs and said, if we fast, so if we do a bigger stress to the body rather than eating less longer, let's do a full fast for a few days and see whether that actually induces the cellular regeneration in mice and then afterwards, in humans. And that was the biggest discovery. So he went from going from a chronic restriction to a short stressful signal to the body that's fasting, showing that our body in fasting puts a lot of defensive strategies that all contribute to us being better performance as a body, trying to deal with issues that the body started to build, especially age-related issues, and help us live healthier longer. And this is where the first aha moment came in, that fasting wasn't just the absence of food. It lived with us for so many years, hundreds of thousands of years. And then religion, all top 4 religions actually agree on one word, which is fasting. So we carried fasting all the way to the last 100 years. Then we started becoming less religious. We started eating every day. The supply chain of food got optimized. Food became cheap, so every day eating multiple times. We started stocking fat, accelerating aging, and increasing the onset of cancer, which is now a big epidemic, diabetes, the biggest epidemic, Alzheimer's, and autoimmune diseases. So he kind of identified that fasting wasn't the absence of food. It was actually part of counterbalancing the excessive food that we live in today. And if we bring it back to our practice, to our life today, it could counterbalance the unhealthy aging process we're going through and the acceleration towards the onset of chronic diseases.
Outstanding. So I wrote some questions down. There's a little confusion amongst the doctors and certainly the populace about the types of fasting and the benefits.
Yes.
So could you clarify this to everybody out there? Because I get a lot of questions. Intermittent fasting, food mimicking diet, which you mentioned, and some other time-restricted eating, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, so that field kind of blew up in the last 3 years, and it was mainly due to our research on the value of fasting. But then the word fasting get out of the public, and then you hear about different fasting times and protocols, etc. But let me clarify and stratify actually, or go into typology of fasting. So you have all the way from fasting for a few hours. We call that time-restricted eating, meaning within a day, there are a number of hours you're not eating, and then you're squeezing the time during which you're eating you're restricting that time into a few hours. So, we in the book, and Professor Longo recommends that we do 12 hours of fast during a day, and then restrict the time where you ingest food to 12 hours. Some people take it a little bit longer to 14 hours or 16 hours, trying to lose weight on the short term. We're not sure whether this is healthy on the long term. The more you prolong the overnight fast, you might a little bit put some organs into stress. There are some trials showing that. We're not sure, but we're almost sure, or the science up until today shows that 12 hours of fast, 12 hours of food, which follows circadian rhythm, which follows what the human evolution. This is what we call time-restricted eating, is prolonging the overnight fast and shrinking the time during the day where you eat. And time-restricted feeding is the soft fasting method, and it helps you lose weight because you're prolonging the time you're not ingesting food, and a lot of trials show you that it could lead to certain weight loss. Now, if you go longer to a full day of fast, this is where you start talking about what we call today intermittent fasting, although a lot of time-restricted eating is falsely labeled under intermittent fasting. Intermittent fasting is, the word intermittent is such an open word. Everything you do on and off is intermittent, right? If you play tennis 1 day a week or 6 days a week, you're still intermittently playing tennis. So the intermittent word is undefined today. But in the mainstream sense, a lot of people apply it to say I'm fasting for a few hours, or I'm fasting for a day. And if you do it twice a week, it's called a 5-2 fast. The 2 days of fasting and 5 days of food. If you do it 3 times a week, it's a 4-3. So intermittent fasting is fasting for a short period. If you want the softer definition of it, you're fasting for short periods on and off. And again, the goal mainly is to lose weight, but when you lose weight, obviously you optimize the metabolic correlate of weight, cholesterol, triglyceride, CRP if you have higher CRP. So it's a good way of skipping food for a certain period and then losing the weight. Now you go into the third classification of fasting. We call it short-term fast. And this is 2 to 3 days. And why it's a separate class when you do 2 or 3 days, consecutive days? Because now you're stressing your body beyond a few hours. Once you stress your body towards the second or the third day, the body first reaction always is, it's like a company going through bankruptcy. The first thing, or non-seeing revenues, the first thing, you go to the bank account and get your reserves. So on day one of fasting or intermittent fasting, on the first day, you're using the fat, you're using the liver to dump some calories into the blood that feeds the body. But when you step into day 2 and 3, burning down the fat and using the glucagon in the liver is not enough. So now you're asking the cells to start eating the debris inside of them. So you're telling them, I cannot get you a lot of calories anymore. We're on day 2 and 3. You try to source calories from the inside, try to detox, and try to optimize your performance. We call that autophagy. Self-eat, auto is self, and phagy is eat. And it's a symptom of stress. It's a symptom that the body is going through a stressful, a difference in calories. And then the body is trying to now optimize its performance to survive the fast, and started impacting the cell. So short-term fasting induces autophagy and helps the cell to start, optimizing their performance. And why we mentioned it, because in 2016 as well, autophagy won the Nobel Prize in medicine. So it became a big word. And there's a lot of focus in integrative medicine and functional medicine around that. So now if you go beyond day 3, what we call periodic fasting. So if you fast for 4 or 5 days or longer, it's a fourth category that we call periodic fasting or prolonged fasting. And here, again, if you go back to the example of a company, using the reserve on day 1 and 2, which is in the body, use the fat and the liver, calories, then you structure the company in the medium term, in the body you do autophagy. And if this company going bankruptcy, which is the body after day 3, you're going to have to let some of the employees go, and you're going to have to keep your success bars and survive, get the inefficient part out and survive to the least or the most efficient way. And the body does the same thing on day 4 and 5. We start seeing in our preclinical and clinical trials a higher level of circulating stem cells, and we see regeneration happening in the body. So the body, we assume, is really getting rid of elderly cells, the inefficient ones, and is pushing the stem cell because they're younger, they're much more cost effective in the way they treat calories, they're taking over. And we've shown actually in clinical trials that there's an 800% increase in circulating stem cells, at least in the initial group of people that we tested the stem cells on. And in mice, we see this in multiple trials, a regeneration in the immune blood cells, a regeneration in the stem cells of the GI tract, and it happens at big time over there. And that stem cell-based regeneration is really what made fasting a big buzz today. It wasn't losing the weight, because you can diet in different ways and lose some of the weight. It's really autophagy happening at the bigger stress with day 2 and 3. And then if you continue to day 4 and 5, this is where you're reshaping the body, you're rebooting the body at the cellular level. Now, it's very difficult to do 5 days of water fast, and it has its side effects, headaches, and you might have hypoglycemia or lower blood pressure. So when these discoveries were made at the University of Southern California and they went to human trials, it was very difficult to do water fast in the trial, and people were defaulting all the time. So USC actually wrote grants to the National Institute of Health and asked for money to continue fasting research, but now to develop a fasting mimicking diet, so that we have people go faster into fasting, enhance the effect, and decrease the side effects. And this is how the fasting mimicking diet was born. It was out of a necessity when USC and Mayo Clinic were doing fasting research and impact on cancer as well. And the patients couldn't really sustain 5 days of fast, and there was no other solution but to feed them something. And the entire discovery of the fasting mimicking diet happened out of that need. And the fasting mimicking diet is a fully plant-based, natural ingredient products that is designed to nourish your body and give you, certain macros and micros to nourish your body, and we can talk about those, but keep the cells in a fasting mode, and therefore inducing the benefits of fasting. And actually now we're seeing we enhance some of those on the microbiome, for example, while actually decreasing the side effects and the pain of going through 5 days of fast.
So to put together what you said, I really want you to reiterate just for about a minute, how does the fasting mimicking diet fasting while eating food. It's going to be hard for a lot of the
Yes.
non-doctors out there. So they're saying, wait a minute, hold it. I can eat. So essentially you're saying I can eat. Your body feels full, but your brain thinks you're fasting. Could you expand upon that? And then I'm going to get back to the gut because I'm all about the gut to brain axis. So go.
Yeah, it's not only the brain, it's the cell. So, and we got this question, this is maybe the first question I always get, the types of fasting, we're confused, should I do a few hours, etc. And I hope we clarified that. Restricting food, time restricted eating, intermittent fasting if you go for a day, and then and on and off, and then short-term fast, and then a periodic fast. And the longer you go, the better the cellular defense is. So this is the categories of fasting. Now, the second question I get most of the time is, what do you mean we're eating and then we're fasting? Is how can the body actually be fasting while you're feeding the body? There's sugar, there's proteins, there's fat. So how is that even possible? And it is possible because, again, the same team of nutritionists and experts in longevity nutrition at USC, which by the way has the only program in the world on nutrition and longevity and the only PhD in aging and nutrition and longevity, they identified how the cell senses food. So at the cellular level, at the end of the day, everything ends up being a biochemistry messaging for the cells. And the cells have, a PKA and a RAS pathways and an mTOR pathways. And through these three pathways is where most of the food signal comes in. And it comes from carbohydrates inducing insulin and insulin bringing the carbs into the cell in the form of energy, and the proteins inducing IGF-1, the insulin-like growth factors, and telling the pathways as well that is a signal of protein. So to simplify this is carbohydrates and proteins are sensed through three pathways in a cell. And if you devise a diet that doesn't spike, that doesn't have high concentration of protein and carbs, but also as important as the concentration is the types of amino acids and the structure and the types of carbs and the glycemic index there. If you devise a diet that gets these ingredients into the blood, but doesn't also spike the growth factors as a result of that, and doesn't get the signal into the cells that, hey, you should go off fasting, we're all good, we have high spikes of insulin and a long spike of insulin, we have high IGF in the body, and we have a lot of proteins. As long as you're nourishing the body without inducing or triggering these sensing pathways, you can mimic fasting. And that's the art that we have at USC under the sponsorship of the National Institute of Health and the National Cancer Institute. And it took, I think, up until today, USC has raised over $36 million just to get to it. Because some people think, hey, let's put a diet or let's cook something at home that can mimic fasting. It's way beyond this complexity. It's respecting the circadian rhythm. It's respecting what your body needs in the morning versus at night. It's respecting how much of every macronutrient and micronutrients and the sequence of those, the sequence of amino acids, the sequence of carbs that actually are nourishing in the body in a natural way, because there's nothing in the diet that's unnatural. Some people think you eat it and then you don't absorb it, or it's fully natural. It's labeled as GRAS by the FDA. Natural in the sense that there's no artificial, or additive or preservative added to it. And the art is, how can we first get your body fast into fasting? So it has also high mid-chain fatty acids, or what we call the ketones. It has a high ketone-like ingredients, so that on day one gets your body fast into fasting. Then it nourishes your body without really triggering the sensing pathway to an extent that the cell says, I'm safe, I'm moving away from being defensive and being regenerative or an autophagy. And it's a very, very fine line between respecting the body's need for macro and micronutrients, between respecting circadian rhythm, respecting the stem cells, and not starving the body and nourishing the body. And it took literally 15 years and tens of millions of dollars to get there.
I got a ton of questions on what you just said. So number one, and we ask it all the time, you did a great job. You really basically also said what are the benefits of fasting mimicking diets. And you also just really talked about what happened when you're on a fasting mimicking diet. So one of the things that I wrote some notes down is macro and micronutrients. You kind of spoke about it, but so many people say, if it's 750 calories, it's 1,000, if it's X number of calories, can I match those calories and get the same thing then if I do fasting mimicking and on the Prolong, which we're going to show you in a second, which I use in my office?
Yeah, so the Prolong fasting mimicking diet, the first product we put in the market, we called it Prolong for promoting longevity. And it has your food for 5 days. And the first day is 1,100 calories. This is the box.
Which I have in my office.
Yeah. Uh, and and the first day is a 1,100 calorie day, and then every other day out of the 5 days is almost 800 calories. But the calories is really a tiny piece of the story. We actually have different fasting mimicking diets that we're testing for different conditions, and that are lower or higher in calories. So a lot of first reaction we saw sometimes from nutritionists or from people saying, okay, I can read the macros. There's a number of calories there, so I can match that. And actually, it's the calories is just a piece of the story. Again, you can go and eat a piece of steak, for example, which could be 400 or 500 calories, but the steak actually triggers the increase in IGF, and it triggers the nutrient sensing pathway. So it's not about the amount of calories, it's just one articulation. It's very important to have the three other axioms there, which is the sequencing in respect of the circadian rhythm, the timing of the day, and then having a different combination of amino acids that we studied doesn't sensitize the sensing pathway, same as carbs. What kind of chains of carbs, what timing, what sequence, what amount, so that you mimic fasting and you don't get the cells to respond to that. Because you can mimic fasting by eating 100 calories. That's starvation. This is not what we call partial fast, or what we call traditionally. I mean, if you eat 2 lettuce during the day and half an avocado, probably you could fast on those. But you're fasting by starving. The fasting mimicking diet is a nourishment diet. It's not that, hey, it's too difficult to do, I'm going to be starved. Actually, you're going to be nourished, and yet you're going to be in fasting. That was the art of balancing those.
So there's a methodology which we talked about. It's really well described right now with you, and also in Dr. Longo's longevity diet. So I'm going to pick this up again. I have these in my office. As you know, I'm doing a talk on this. I'm a practitioner who provides this to people. Where can you get the Prolong? How can people get this, other than obviously just from me?
Yeah. So initially, we launched Prolong 2 years ago. And initially, we launched it only with what we call licensed healthcare practitioners. So MDs, medical doctors, chiropractors, naturopath, and dietitians. And because it was so much scientifically proven, the benefits behind the diet. And I didn't mention to the audience yet, but the preclinical trial showed an 11% increase in the health span of mice, meaning the mice lived 11% healthier during their lifespan, which is amazing metric. In the human trial, showed a lot of improvements in the metabolic health that's correlated with the risk factors of aging. So another sense of impacting longevity, and then the regeneration that we've proven at the cellular level helped us get a patent. We waited 5 years. We filed it in 2013, and we just got this July of 2018, this past July, we got the first patent issued in history on the formulation that says reducing regeneration, longevity, and health span. And all of us, we know the word longevity, and we're excited about living longer. But if you live long and sick, probably most people don't want to do that. And the key word there is health span, is living healthier longer. And we have the FMD, the fasting mimicking diet, got a fully issued patent, first in history, on promoting regeneration, longevity, and health span. So when we launched Prolong 2 years ago, we called it Pro Longevity, which is a product that is positioned to optimizing, metabolic health, and obviously when you fast, you lose weight. So that's the side effect, but it's a very positive side effects that a lot of people love. So we went with the healthcare practitioner channel initially only, and positioned for metabolic health, but then. For the last year, we were getting thousands and thousands of emails about people saying, I'm healthy, I don't have a doctor to give me Prolong, I really want to access Prolong. So we opened it a year ago for people to even access it through only our online portal, our Nutra portal. And they answer a questionnaire. If they are sick or they're on prescription medicine or any of the exclusion criteria, if they're a patient profile, then we send them back to their doctors, or we send them to doctors that work with Prolong. And if they are fully healthy, they don't have a doctor to go to, and they don't need to go to a practitioner, then they can access the Prolong directly. So So just to close that, I know you have major interest in microbiome and it changes in the body. So yeah, we definitely are doing research on the impact of the fasting mimicking diet on the microbiome. For your audience, it's well established today that the microbiome plays a major role in general health, whether it's gut brain, it's gut heart, or other linkages. And today, a lot of us suffer from leaky gut, where we're getting things into our body that historically we're not getting into the body. So potentially impacting microbiome and the absorption within the GI tract is very important. And we haven't published the results yet, and so I cannot really go and share those today. But we have, I think, pretty exciting and significant impact there. And another big article on the fasting mimicking diet and microbiome will be out there, I would say, within less than 2 months. So look forward for that. It's going to be a big buzz about the additional value of fasting, which we initially didn't recognize, but it turns out that when you fast, you're stressing the body, and when you stress the body aligns everything it needs to align to survive, whether it's the gut, whether it's the metabolic health, whether it's regenerating cells, whether it's autophagy. So you can see how this body turns out into a lean, mean fighting machine to survive the stress, which we're investing into that so that we allow the body to hopefully be biologically younger and hopefully delay the risk factors associated with aging.
Outstanding. So, we've talked about it. It's 5 days, and you've really delineated all the excellent health benefits. You've come out with something new, tastes great. I carry it in my office now also. They call it the Fast Bar. So what is it? What's positioned for? And if you could talk about the macronutrients a little bit also.
We had a lot of requests of people saying, well, we are doing the Prolon 5 days, and we only do it, you do it once a month. You don't have to do it every month. If you need to do Prolon for metabolic health reasons, you can do 3 Prolons over 3 months, and then you start doing it on and off. But healthy people, they don't have a metabolic reason to do Prolon. They can do it 2 or 3 times or 4 times, a year. But many of them are saying, we are seeing the benefits. And we don't want to go back to the burgers we used to eat. We don't want to go back to the pizzas. How can we maintain in between Prolon cycles? What can we do to maintain the benefits? At the same time, a lot of people are doing intermittent fasting, which is typically time-restricted eating, in the sense that they're skipping breakfast. And there are a couple of articles showing that skipping breakfast might not be healthy in the long term. There are biases in these articles, so I wouldn't bet on the results 100%, but directionally, the body is saying, I'm waking up in the morning, the brain needs to function through the day, the body has to move. So probably you do need to have something in the morning so that you get through the day in a healthy way. Again, if you want to lose weight, a lot of people are skipping that breakfast, but some longevity articles are showing that could be ideal. It might not be ideal, we don't know. And we felt the responsibility as a company to say, okay, if you're going to skip breakfast, we have a way, because we have a technology that mimics fasting. You can take that bar, have it in the morning so that at least you're not fully skipping breakfast. We don't believe the bar could replace a full meal in the morning, in the sense that having a good breakfast is healthy and we don't go against it. But we're saying if you're going to skip that breakfast, at least you can have that bar. It mimics the effect as if almost you skipped the breakfast, but you're eating something in the morning. And a lot of people look at the label of the bar and say, wait a second, you have 7 or 8 grams of sugar, and then you have high fat and you have low proteins. How come I'm eating carbs and I'm fasting? And that's the entire ingenuity, I think, of the fasting mimicking diet. It's not like if you give a gram or 2 of sugar to the body, then the body goes off fasting. It's what is the fine line between not only sugar, but when you have fibers, the glycemic index is lower. But what is that fine line between nourishing you but really not taking your cells off fasting? And this is the magic formulation that we have. But in general, it's high in good fat, and this is great, for the brain as well. And it's lower in carbs and even lower in the proteins, so that we don't trigger the IGF. And there's just the fast bar as well, replacing lunch or a snack snacking on it in between during the day could be actually a great use of it. All of us today, we're so busy. We go to work and either we delay eating or we end up eating something quick but very unhealthy. And I think for offices, for us as doctors, for executives, all of us, having that bar instead of having a quick dessert or fast food or anything else is really giving you nourishment, super high quality. The bar has no artificial preservative, no additional, artificials. Is gluten free. Is really one of the cleanest thing you can ingest. Yet it's mimicking a positive effect related to longevity. So I think there's a great use for us. Instead of snacking on a bar full of sugar or on a bar that's full of high protein and preservative, is to eat it even throughout the day or towards dinner. And if you're skipping breakfast, again, don't skip it, just have the bar. It maintains, it gives you high quality, good ingredients, but at the same time maintains that or extend that fast.
I agree. Most of the bars out there in the market, traveling a lot like you do and being on a run, have the gluten, have the dairy, no gluten, no dairy, as we know, don't have the good quality ingredients, and again, are not mimicking what's needed to have a healthy lifestyle from their macronutrients. So you talked about the fast bar, helping you through the day. What are some of the tips you would want to provide for people to live a healthier, longer life?
Yes, it's a very interesting question. And again, most of us, if you ask us, do you want to live long? We say, if sick like my grandma, I wouldn't want to do it. But if healthy long, then they suddenly change their mind. And, I do a few things myself. I definitely do the fasting mimicking diet from time to time. Now that the fast bar is here, I do more of the intermittent fasting, feeling that at least I'm having something for breakfast. And I do, in my office during the day, I do eat the bar just to put something healthy in my body, because before I would have this rush, I would be so hungry and have a rush for food, and I would go and end up eating something that's really unhealthy. But I also do a few other things, definitely the exercise. I try to do my 30, 40 minutes. I walk to work both ways, which is a 17-minute walk. And then on top of that, I do add a 30-minute and some weightlifting. Now, then you can go to interesting, number 3 is definitely stress, right? The biggest correlation is really stress and sleep, which is something I preach, but I don't do that much out of necessity at work. But sleeping, definitely the 7-8 hours seems to have correlate. And interesting enough, one of the biggest impact on longevity comes from your social network, being loved, loving others, and feeding that sense of happiness and bond between humans. It's actually an unappreciated factor, but a lot of correlations showing that this metric actually being correlated to this. So it's literally food, diet, exercise, stress, sleep, and the social network and being loved and loved. Now, there are a lot of other things that are being studied. The fasting is definitely something we rediscovered, science rediscovered, that we can do to potentially improve our health span. And then, there's a role for inflammaging, what we call today inflammaging or inflammation.
Sure.
So is that baby aspirin helping really with the cholesterol plague, or is helping with the inflammation in the body? Big question mark. I actually tend to pop, an aspirin pill just from that standpoint, just to kind of, I feel that inflammation or CRP is really the engine is the heat of the engine. And the lower you take that heat, the longer that car could go. And there are definitely now studies on rapamycin and metformin, and to see if slowing down one pathway like mTOR or other pathways could help us with aging. These are pathways interventions. They could hold a promise, but we don't know whether naturally they would have other side effects. So it'd be interesting to keep looking at the science and see what happens in these fields. So, but these are, if you want, the simple, effective ways that I consider that I do for my own health span.
So it's a lifestyle plan. It's all about lifestyle. Sure. I'm a chiropractor and MD, and we agree. It's all about changing lifestyle, changing your habits, and quality of life. And Prolong's a great piece to add in anybody's armamentarium.
I think with Prolong, we're opening the first chapter on a product, longevity, and science behind it. I think If anything, and today we have 6,800 clinics registered offering Prolon just in the US, and we're in 12 countries, so probably there's beyond 10,000 clinics. If anything, the science behind it, the legitimacy behind it, the NIH, the articles in Cell and JAMAs and the big medical journals is helping a lot, building once and for all, because we're all hungry for this, once and for all, to have a nutrition technology company, a Nutritech, the same as we have a biotech that we trust and we take pills from. We need to have a Nutritech company that we trust, that do preclinical and clinical trial, and finally we stand behind. And I think Prolon was the very first validation chapter there. We're doing today 24 trials, Nutra and USC and 12 other universities, 24 trials on the fasting mimicking diet, but now we're applying the diet to conditions. We said if the body is stressed with fasting, is regenerating itself and trying to survive, well, the body sees a disease, would the body try to optimize the course of that disease or potentially reverse it? And we're still in preclinical trial on most diseases, but we're looking at cancer, at diabetes, at cardiovascular, and Alzheimer's, showing very positive mice data. We're going to see whether that translates to human data, but I can promise you that this year is going to be very exciting from a publication standpoint about a lot of the new efficacy of the fasting mimicking diet, and hopefully in the next 2 to 3 years, we're going to show a lot more effects on FMD, on conditions itself, and hopefully that will happen because once again, it's going to show scientifically that food has a major role to play, not only in us staying healthier longer, but if we have conditions, what we should eat. If I have cancer, should I keep eating a steak and feeding cancer? If I have diabetes, should I keep eating unhealthy food and pushing myself and just on the other side inject insulin? That's not the solution. We know that's not the solution. To keep the source of the problem there and trying to compensate that with a pill. The pill business and the biotech business has a lot of respect and a lot of good value in our life, but should not be the solution of everything. There's a lot of conditions that we can actually, with lifestyle and with proper diet and other changes in our life, we can prevent a lot of that and reform the system in a way that becomes a true healthcare system.
Outstanding. Health is wealth. As you know, I saw your email that food be your medicine, let medicine be your food. Somebody famous once said that.
Yeah.
How can they find out a little bit more information? You got a website that we can share with them? Social?
Definitely. So the general website of the company, Nutra, which licenses the fasting mimicking diet rights and puts commercialize the product, you can go to l-nutra.com. We called it Nutra for longevity through nutraceuticals. And then if you want to specifically look for Prolon, if you're a consumer, prolonfmd.com for fasting mimicking diet. So prolonfmd.com is the consumer side. If you're a practitioner, a healthcare practitioner, you can go to Prolon Pro. For the professional, prolonpro.com is where you can find more specialized training for the practitioner.
Outstanding. A little testimonial for you. Use in my office.
For the fastbar, fastbar.com, we forgot about that. Fastbar.com, an amazing lifestyle website. I really love that.
Outstanding. As I said, a little testimonial. Use in my office. Patients love it. Blood markers have been great. I recommend it strongly to everybody. As everybody knows, you can look in the description at the bottom of this webcast. We've got an in-office talk that we're going to, try and expand it. We're going to do a Facebook Live with it. I'm very honored and happy to have you. You answered so many questions that some of my patients and colleagues have about fasting and fasting mimicking diets. We need to do this again because I have a funny feeling after this, they're going to have some follow-up questions. Get your calendar ready. We got Dr. Joseph Antoun, Dr. Rob Silverman, Proven Health Alternatives. Always yours in health. See you guys soon.